To Sid in Madrid and switch the focus to Real Madrid. We were all caught a little unawares by the Romelu Lukaku developments. I imagine the Merengues and one Alvaro Morata were caught a little unawares by the development too. What's the latest from there?
Yeah, as you say, that they weren't anticipating that. That said, there was a meeting at the Bernabeu earlier in the week between Alvaro Morata's father, his agent, and Real Madrid to try and force the deal through, to try and get it done. They were aware of the fact that Manchester United and Real Madrid still had not met on a price. They still weren't agreeing a fee. And they always knew, all the way along Alvaro Morata's camp, that they could agree a deal with Manchester United. They could set everything up, but they needed the two clubs to come to reach that deal, and it didn't happen. Now, they I think, have been caught out by this. I think they anticipated that there were problems brewing, that this needed to be brought to a head, and it hasn't happened. And this, I think, the assumption now will be that this ends any chance of Alvaro Morata going to Manchester United. I must admit, there's a little bit of me that wonders, is there still a chance that they actually buy both of them? But I don't think it's very likely. I was intrigued as well, listening to Mark talk about how Lukaku was always Manchester United's first choice, because they've gone a very long way down the road with Alvaro Morata. If this was effectively a smokescreen, or at least only an alternative to their other signing, my feeling intuitively is certainly from Morata's point of view that they thought there was a good chance of this, but they knew that Real Madrid weren't going to drop on the price. And ultimately, I suppose, United, pushed by the need to get on with pre-season training, pushed by the need to have their squad ready for that moment, have decided to go elsewhere.
And Sid, does that leave Chelsea as the logical destination for Morata and his, the man who admires him very much, Antonio Conte, perhaps being his boss?
Mm. Well, look, on the face of it, yes, 100% it leaves Chelsea as the logical outcome. Obviously, the other outcome at the moment, and let's see if other clubs emerge, is that he stays at Real Madrid, which is not what he wants to do, because he doesn't entirely believe those promises, if you like, that he'll play a key part. This season, he's got a better goals per minute ratio than anyone else. He's played over 40 games across the course of the season. But here's the key statistic for you. From the last 16 stage of the Champions League onwards, all the way through to the final, he only played 25 minutes. And Morata feels, at his age, at 24, that he needs to take that big step now, that he hasn't quite done it. And this was the opportunity to go to Manchester United. Now, earlier in the spring, he thought that his obvious next destination was Chelsea. There was a slight sense of surprise in the Morata camp, I think, that Chelsea hadn't come in with a big bid, presumably because they'd focused all of their attention on Lukaku, because Antonio Conte's long-term future perhaps is not entirely tied down at Chelsea. And there was a sense that it's a bit odd that this hasn't kind of been forced through, that they haven't followed up with that interest that was there, because, as you say, Conte, a big admirer of Morata, has tried to bring him in twice, and without working with him either time. Brought him in at Juventus and then moved on. Tried to bring him in at Chelsea last summer, and it didn't happen. They thought that might happen this time, but then all of the focus had gone into Manchester United. The good news, I suppose, from Morata's point of view, and possibly even from Real Madrid, if ultimately they do want the money from Morata, is that it's only early July. There's still plenty of time to go. We've got almost 2 months for this to be resolved, to try and find an alternative. And given that Lukaku's out the window now for Chelsea, unless, of course, they can match United and beat them to him still, then you would say that Morata makes sense. That's not to say it will happen, but it certainly makes sense.
Ali, what's your take if the dominoes all fall the way it looks like they're going to?
The first thing is that Alvaro Morata needs to leave Real Madrid. He's reached the point of his career where he has to be playing. At 24 years old, the career of a player, to maximize your earning potential, your potential as a player, you start getting to the point to where you have to get repetition. So sitting behind somebody else at Real Madrid, as prestigious a club as it is, you need to find an opportunity elsewhere. And if that's the case, well, it makes all the sense in the world for Alvaro Morata to go to Chelsea. Of course, this is all dependent upon Romelu Lukaku being finalized to Manchester United. A talented player that gives you multiple opportunities and multiple options in the attacking half, because he's got movement, he's got the skill to finish his chances. He's a guy that can provide you the hold-up play. Morata is the potential, because you haven't seen it happen in the Premier League, and you haven't seen it happen throughout the course of a whole season. But he is the full package if you believe that he can provide something special for you.
I think with Conte having Morata at Juve, he knows the system. He knows the system that Conte wants to play at Chelsea. I think that Chelsea fans, and I think the manager, Conte, will be licking his lips if he can get Morata, because you see the type of goals that he can score. He can score all types of goals. He's great upstairs. He holds it up well. He can run the channels if you want him to. He's a classic modern-day number 9 in my view. And it keeps you playing. You know, when you're being high press, you can play beyond the high press, and it gets you out. I think he's a terrific player.
Good fit for Chelsea, potentially,
Absolutely.
Stevie?
Listen, I think Chelsea...
A better fit than Lukaku,
Absolutely. Chelsea are going to end up actually coming out OK on this if they'd get Morata.
Yeah.
For me, listen, there's a couple of things that Lukaku has, Morata doesn't, and that is just power and strength.
And a proven...
I'll have a football player over that every day of the
And a proven
week.
Premier League goal-scoring record. Lukaku has that.
Well,
Morata doesn't yet.
Well, he's got a proven goal-scoring record with a team that aren't under severe pressure week in and week out.
But he hasn't been the main man yet, has he?
Well, because he's had a few decent players in front of him at Real Madrid.
Right. Yeah,
but look, when he played at Juventus, he's exactly what Conte wanted. He was that outball. And when was it Tevez bouncing around him and Mandzukic, but they were very, very decent. I think this is if Chelsea can get him, I think the Chelsea fans, they will be very, very happy.
ESPN FC on the campus of UCLA for what is day 2 of Real Madrid's pre-season training camp here, day 2 of 10 in a row, and I can tell you already there's been a significant spike, a real uptick in media presence here, a lot of journalists arriving from Madrid, and one player they've been talking about a lot to me has been Alvaro Morata, of course, behind me going through his routines, so heavily linked just a week or so ago with Manchester United, who are training just 200 yards away on an opposite field. Of course, that link has cooled down with the acquisition of Romelu Lukaku. Interestingly, the word out of Madrid is it's Morata they want, not the money. That's the official line from Real Madrid, that they are much keener on keeping Morata. They value him very much. Of course, Morata has expressed a desire to be the #1 striker elsewhere. When pushed, it seems as though the figure of 100 million euros is going to be the minimum required for Real Madrid to let Morata go. The question is, will Chelsea meet that valuation? They are some way off that at the moment, and that's perhaps why the name of Aubameyang has started to surface so strongly. It seems as though Alvaro Morata may be the transfer saga that gets drawn out into one of those summer-long affairs we've seen so much of in recent seasons. That remains to be seen. We will continue to keep you updated here on the campus of UCLA.
Seem to have found themselves another man to add to their list. Timoe Bakayoko seems set to join the Blues pending the medical. Shaka Hislop here with me. Shaka, good business?
I think so. And Bakayoko certainly come to the fore with Monaco. You see his talents. I think it'll be the perfect counter to N'Golo Kante. I think very similar in their style. Bakayoko not as good defensively. Kante not as good in terms of precision of pass and his own passing range. But I think those two will work exceptionally well together. Now, the question is, how does that play into Nemanja Matic?
Exactly.
And what you lose or what you gain? Again, I think you gain a better defensive midfielder. But I think in Bakayoko, you don't necessarily get the goals, though they have similar stats, or the range of goals that you get from Nemanja Matic when needed, as needed. Now, so this means, more of a focus on their front three, front five, as it were, for Chelsea, which I don't think is beyond them, certainly not with the players that they currently have on their books.
So, Matic, should he start looking elsewhere?
Without question. And the rumour is that he's already out on
Yes.
his own, training alone. I also don't think that there'll be any shortage of clubs interested in
Quality.
signature of Nemanja Matic. Matic is an exceptional midfielder, and let's not forget that here. Maybe not to Conte's liking, but again, no question, a player of his qualities, there'll be no shortage of takers.
All right, thanks so much, Shaka Hislop. So a new start for Bakayoko at Chelsea, whereas it looks like Nemanja Matic is on his way out.
With Chelsea, shall we? Juliana, you mentioned it before. There's been so many rumours about internal conflicts between Antonio Conte and the board with regards to the signings that he wanted that haven't been brought in. What's going on?
It's not something new. That's the problem, and that's why I think Antonio Conte is starting to get really frustrated, because last summer, for his first summer at the club, it was already the case. The players he wanted never arrived, and when David Luiz signed on the last day of the transfer window in August, it was before that Koulibaly from Napoli didn't sign, because Bonucci from Juventus didn't sign. They couldn't get him, or couldn't get them either. But they were the first two options. In January, similar, he wanted Llorente from Swansea. That didn't make it. And again, this summer is the same. He wants Timo Bakayoko from Monaco, and he's dragging on and dragging on and dragging on. He wanted Lukaku, he's not getting him. He's getting Antonio Rüdiger from Roma. But again, that was not his first choice. He wanted Bonucci or Koulibaly before him as well. They were all too expensive, or the club. And Marina Granovskaya, who is the main person at Chelsea who is doing transfer business, didn't seem to think that they were better choices than Rüdiger, for example. So I think there's a lot of tension there between people at the club like Granovskaya doing the deals and Antonio Conte, who want to see other players coming at the club.
You mentioned there, Julian, of course, Antonio Rüdiger confirmed this weekend as a Chelsea player. He's come over from 2 seasons with Roma in Serie A. Do you rate him? Is he a good signing?
I do. I think he's very versatile. That's what Conte will like. He can play in a 3 at the back, for example, as a right-hand side centre-half. He can play as a right-back as well in the back 4, or again in the back 4 as a centre-half as well. I think he's a very clever player. He's a strong player. He's got a good right foot. He fits the bill, but again, I don't think he was the first choice for Conte, and Conte would be happy with him because they worked hard on that deal. But again, that's not the players he wanted first.
A bit awkward with Chelsea about to regroup for pre-season, Ian, because of course Diego Costa, as it stands, is still a Chelsea player, but we know that infamous text message was sent from Conte saying thank you very much, but we won't need you anymore. This is going to be a bit strange for Chelsea, especially considering that looks like, certainly, they missed out on the Lukaku deal.
Well, I think any day now we're going to hear from Chelsea that it was all a terrible misunderstanding. This
that old chestnut.
Yes, that's right. It's going to sort of disappear from history because they might need Diego Costa after all. But the word is he's probably going to go to Atletico Madrid, even though he probably couldn't play for them, and they'd have to loan him out again. But I don't know with that. Maybe we'll see Chelsea, if they are going to miss out on Lukaku, maybe they will now step in and go for Alvaro Morata, who, of course, United were going to sign. And, of course, Conte knows Morata very well from his time at Juventus.
Yeah, you'd think of the names, boys, that are doing the rounds with regards to strikers. You've got Aubameyang, Belotti and Morata, haven't you? Like Chelsea, in theory, should have the pick of those 3. They've got the money.
And if the pick of those 3 would be Alvaro Morata.
In your opinion?
Yes, if I'm making the choice, because I'm thinking of potential, I'm thinking what's the future lies ahead, the age of the player, the productivity, what I think this guy can be for me. I think Alvaro Morata, of those 3, is the guy that I would go after. If I'm Chelsea and I'm struggling and now it feels like things are getting away from me, that's a player that I push all the chips in with.
Why not Aubameyang? Why not the top goal scorer in the Bundesliga last season?
There is a reason as to why so many people have walked away from Aubameyang, where he seemed to be the hot commodity, the hot property, and somehow he kind of fell off the radar, and PSG doesn't want him anymore, and this team doesn't want him anymore, and even a guy like Jurgen Klopp that has had him at Borussia Dortmund, there is no conversation of that going on. So it's people that have worked with him are saying, we don't want him. There's got to be something else that we're not privy to. So I don't want him either.
Look, there's a couple of things. I think Aubameyang is perfectly suited to how Dortmund plays. Fast, on the counter-attack, running at defences. If you play with one of the big boys and all of a sudden you find yourself in the box, kind of crowded out, I'm not sure that suits his style of game as well. But I think the issue with both Aubameyang and Belotti over Morata is just the price tag. Between what Dortmund and Torino are asking or are insisting on, I'm not sure that you get it's a bigger gamble. Whereas Morata and as Ian rightly points out, Conte knows Morata from his time, a more reasonable price and a striker that I think you have a little bit more faith in, given that price.
Out of those 3, which one are you having, Ian, if you had the choice at Chelsea?
I think, just as Shaka was saying, I think Morata would be the player to go for.
Diego Costa dragging his heels at Chelsea about moving on, maybe holding up their plans to bring in Romelu Lukaku. Do you give that much credence, Steve?
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, I think a lot of this is Chelsea's own making. Initially, I didn't believe that Conte had sent a message to Costa saying there's no future here, because that's not how you go about it when you're a coach. You know, you have to, whether it's the group or whether it's individuals, you have to look at them face to face and tell them how it is. And so this is all coming back, I think, now to bite them in the backside. You know, he's not playing ball. it's a slap in the face. You've just won the Premier League title for your club and your man.